Good evening, friends. For me, Manchester is now becoming a very familiar place. Grandson now just got married, Gershi. It's into the Halpern family. So for me, I get forever, ever closer. Besides the fact that my brother-in-law, Rabbi Simcha, was one of the founders of Bonei Olam here in Manchester. So I feel very close to what is going to be a very momentous evening for me. I've never been involved with Bonei Olam before. I didn't know about Bonei Olam before. And when I did start hearing about it, when I was approached by the two young light at the chasna of my grandchild, and they told me about it, and they told me what it entails and what they're doing. I then started reading. Just come back from Lakewood this evening. I had the zechus to be in America and find out there where Bonei Olam is really the backbone of this infertility problem that Klal Yisrael is going through. And I looked at some of the DVDs and CDs and read the material, and I have to admit that I cried a few times. I never realized, I didn't realize, I'm ashamed to say, in all my askonas, I did not realize the pain and the hurt and the difficulties that a couple go through. Every single couple that gets married, the minute they get married, what are they thinking about? Emilz Hashem, we're going to build a family. It's the first thing they think about. What do they think about? Pour vous. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's allowed us to get married in order that we should have a family. And how many of us, unwittingly and not knowingly, as he was just saying before, in a conversation, and you're talking about your children, taking them to an outing, little child kept me up all night, and you don't realize that in the company that you're speaking, there's a couple there who don't have children. And it's like a knife in their heart. You're saying something that to them is not just a chas v'sholom, an insult. It's a knife. Where am I in all this? They haven't got time to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'sholom. I'm not suggesting that for one moment. Very often they blame themselves, or sometimes it's causes shalom bias problems, where one is blaming the other, until Bonei Olam. All of a sudden, you have an organization of Haimish Yidden, our people, Charedim, not doctors, who tell you when you go there and say to them, too bad, so you won't have children, but you'll have a good time. You'll have a family, you'll be able to enjoy yourselves, go on holidays. You'll never have a child. The word never is used very easily today in the medical profession. There's no such thing as never, as we know. And here you've got, and you'll hear later from my friend Rabbi Abba Dunner, the founder of Bonei Olam, you suddenly have got a group of people who can talk about the subject, who you can go to in confidence, and are going to treat the matter in the manner in which we Haimish Yidden understand it has to be treated. We know what it means to hold a child. I certainly know what it means to hold a child. Just come back from bar mitzvah of a grandchild and had the zechus this week of having a great-grandchild. Baruch Tiyeh. It's a phenomenal feeling. It's a phenomenal feeling. And I want to tell you something. When we sit here today, and I don't know if there's people in the audience here who themselves are going through that problem, but certainly there's people here who've had the problem. It's a question of every one of us feeling and having the Ahavas Yisrael and understanding that Yenem's tzorah is my tzorah. Let me tell you a story that happened to me many years ago during the Yom Kippur War. I was working for my Mechutin. At that time, it wasn't my Mechutin, Woody Stern. I was working in Eretz Yisrael. It was during the Yom Kippur War, and he had a number of hotels. And at that time, I was his Gabbard Stoker, and I looked after his Israeli investments. And I came back when the ceasefire took place. I came back to London. It was a Friday, and Woody's chairman was a fellow called George Lingwood, a Goy, and we're sitting at lunch on a Friday, and I'm telling how a number of our 800 staff have been killed during Yom Kippur War. Terrible, and I was upset, and I was telling Mr. Stern what was happening. And George was sitting at the table. He said, Abba, he said, you know, don't get so excited, this Goy says. We've also got a war. We've got Ireland. At that time, there was troubles in Ireland. We've got Ireland. Boys get killed in Ireland. So some of your people get killed in Israel, and some people get killed in Ireland. I said, wait a second, George. Hold on a second. Let me ask you a question, George. I said, if in your block of flats, Mrs. Murphy loses her son in Belfast, would you think of going upstairs to her flat and knocking on the door and saying, Mrs. Murphy, I'm so sorry to hear that your son was killed in Belfast? He said, Abba, of course I wouldn't do that. It's none of my business. I would have got it, not at all. I wouldn't dare go into her flat. I said, all right. I said, I'm asking another question. If you meet Mrs. Murphy in the lift, and you know that her son was killed 3 days ago, would you say, Mrs. Murphy, I'm so sorry to hear your son was killed? He says, I don't think I'd say that. You know, we British don't exactly, it's not the sort of thing we do. I said, let me tell you something, George. If a Jew is sitting in Buenos Aires over breakfast, and he switches on his radio, and he hears that a Jewish soldier was killed on the border with Lebanon, he stops eating breakfast and cries. That's the difference between you and me, George. Because we feel for each other. Each one of us feels for the next one. And if we are sitting here today, and I had the privilege of looking at those DVDs and listening and reading the material, I feel for every single, and I will do for the rest of my life, HaKadosh Baruch Hu give me the years, for every single couple who chas v'sholem having difficulties in conceiving a family. I feel for them. I can cry for them. I can understand them. I know what it means if they miss holding that little child. If they miss the birthday parties. If they miss the boy at the Chumash party. If they miss the first Upscheren. If they miss their boy going to yeshiva and their girl going to seminary. I feel for them. And I will do for the rest of my life. This has changed my life. This speech tonight that I'm giving has changed my life. 1 in 6, I never dreamt, just heard from our friend here, 1 in 6 have problems with fertility, don't have a chance to have children, have to take expert advice. And the sad thing is, of course, that some of us who are insured, insurance companies won't pay for it. Oh no. IVF infertility treatment, which is what you're doing, is looked upon as elective medicine. I mean, you're choosing to do it. Not something you have to do. You're choosing, you want to have children. Too bad. Insurance companies are not interested. So, of course, you've got this phenomenal problem. A form young couple, worried to talk about it, have to go to their doctor, who they know quite well, but to have to talk on that issue, no idea what to do. And all of a sudden, you've got Bonei Olam. You talk to Hamish Yaman. He'll tell you, go to see this and this doctor. And as we just heard, they don't send you to any doctor. They send you to the best doctor. And they say, one thing we want to tell you. This poor couple suddenly here, a thing like this costs 25, 30,000, 40,000 pounds. Anybody in this room has 30,000 pounds lying in the bank just to be able to spend on something overnight, which may not even work? And Bonei Olam says to them, don't worry. The money's not your problem. The money's not your problem. Your problem is to listen to us and we'll tell you where to go. And if we tell you you've got to go to America, you're going to go to America. Because that's where your particular problem will be dealt with best. And we'll pay for it. We don't want you to worry about the money. Not only that, you don't owe us anything. This is not a loan. And we don't want your donations. Both of you, take it out of your mind, Mr. and Mrs. X. It's not your problem. Your problem is to listen to us. We're going to advise you, as Heimish Yidden, what you have to do, al pi das Teure, and again, these subjects do touch on das Teure, al pi halacha, these matters are very connected with halacha, as you all know. We'll tell you what you can and can't do. You don't have to ask awkward questions. We've got the answers. We have the answers. Not only do we have the answers, but Bonei Olam has the latest technology. They're on top of it every day. I was sitting now talking to our friend from London, Bonei Olam in London, and he told me there's about to be a breakthrough in a particular aspect of IVF, of which I understand nothing. And he said, Emir Hashem, it'll widen the frontiers. More people will be able to be matzliach in having children. What a wonderful way to talk. For Haimishing a man who I don't think went to medical school. He didn't look like it to me. It would be sad to think the Muddy decides who has a child and who doesn't. As Rabbi Abba Dunner says in one of his speeches, money can decide what car you buy. Money can decide which clothes you buy. But money is going to decide whether or not you have a child? Is that what's going to decide whether I do or don't have a child? And because I don't have money, I can't have a child? If I don't have money, I can't buy a Lexus. If I don't have money, I may not be able to buy a new suit every single yontif. But if I don't have money, I can't have a child? Is that where we're up to with our Gashmis? Bonei Olam says no. Money is not going to prevent you from having children. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to have children, you will have a child. Money will not be the obstacle. And I want to tell you something else, and I'll tell this to our doctor friend here. Everything that you are discovering today is not a discovery. It's not an invention. It was there from Maaseh Bereshis. Everything that we discover today, that we see and that we learn in the new frontiers that are being penetrated, that was all there from Maaseh Bereshis. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is allowing us now, through the studies and through the zechus that we have in this generation, to be able to use our knowledge to move a little bit further, to understand the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created Brias Olam. It's all part of Brias Olam. It's part of the Bria. There's nothing new. But these fantastic doctors are given the knowledge through God, through HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be able to now go that little bit further. So what we're looking at now is the Nisim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu created at Brias Olam and Maaseh Bereshis. That's what we're looking at. And those of us who have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu every day. Baruch Hashem, you're giving these people the chance to have that extra knowledge that's always been there. Nothing new. But now we're reaching yet another stage in IVF. It's awkward. As I said, it's very awkward to talk about these things for a couple who grew up at Taras HaKodesh, and to talk about those things to a stranger is even more difficult, even sometimes between husband and wife. And I, who just come out of cancer, was pleased to hear from Rabbi Dunner that cancer is also a problem. If you've been through cancer and the radiation treatment, it also can affect. And neither today, as we all know, the incidence of cancer is greater and greater every year. For whatever reasons, we don't know, but the facts are that more and more people are prone to getting cancer. But again, here Bonei Olam comes in. Young person has cancer. Before they get the treatment, Bonei Olam will tell them, we will give you the preventative medicine, and to ensure that the type of treatment you get will not prevent you from chas v'sholom getting children later on. Again, it's another aspect of the work of Bonei Olam. They care about every single man and woman who are in that situation and need the help of Heimish Yidden, who will give them the advice they need on an issue which requires 1,000% halacha, 1,000% das Torah. None of us would be able to discuss it or talk about it just around the table now as we're sitting here. And this is all Ahavas Yisrael. This has all got to do with Ahavas Yisrael. This is an organization that has Ahavas Yisrael. Everybody knows that, yes, I grew up in Agudas Yisrael, and my mentor was Moshe Sherer, Zecher Tzaddik Livroch. And Moshe Sherer was getting towards the end of his life. He was very sick, and they didn't allow him to shake hands with anybody because of infection. And when the doctor told him that, I was very close to him, and the doctor told him, and he said, one thing I don't agree with you, when I go to Camp Aguda, I want to be able to shake the hands of the children and hug the children. They said, you can't. He said, oh yes, I can. And they took him to Agudas Yisrael, to the camp in the last year of his life. And when he came in, the whole camp stood up and was singing and dancing. And his son Shimshi, L'chaim, took him to the front. And he gave a speech. And he spoke about Ahavas Yisrael. And then he said, I'm going to show you what Ahavas Yisrael means, he said. And as he walked out, he hugged every child. Until he came to bunk Lamed Beis, number 32, which was the bunk of special children, which some of you may know I'm very interested in. And he took every one of those children and kissed them. And Shimshi was saying, Daddy, what are you doing? The doctors told you can't do that. She said, they're my children. That's called Ahavas Yisrael, he said. Don't let them tell you what you can and can't do. Ahavas Yisrael supersedes any of those rules. So Shimshi said to him, in that case, Daddy, kiss me. And for the first time in a year, he hugged his son, Shimshi. And a few months later, he was nifter. Why am I telling you this story? That's Bonei Olam. Bonei Olam is crossing frontiers that you and I don't understand and don't know. They're doing things that none of us would dare talk about. But they're doing things only because they've got Ahavas Yisrael. This man who's sitting here, you're going to hear shortly, has got Ahavas Yisrael. He loves every single day. I said, where do you work? He says to me, everywhere. He said, I'm traveling all over the place. All over the place. He's coming to England, Yisrael, which he said is the biggest amount of cases that they have. Ahavas Yisrael, and the gentleman doesn't have any children of his own. What Ahavas Yisrael? What an unbelievable organization. For me, it's very emotional to talk about such a subject. I want to say just one more little story, because tefillah has a lot to do with it as well. We all have to daven that the money that we give and the manner in which we treat our tzedakah, we should be yotze, and it should go to the right place. How many of us give things and we wonder, I wonder if this was really worth it. Was it really real? And the only way you can know this and be sure is if you get the siyata d'shmai from HaKadosh Baruch Hu through tefillah. So I'll tell you a story of Rav Shach and the Stipler, Zechonim Tzadikim Levrocha. Rav Shach one day meets the Stipler and he says to the Stipler, Ich habe gehört, als ihr seid a Baal Moifes, Bal Meufes. Sagt der Steipler, was beschuldigt? Ich bin ein Bal Meufes. Ich bin gar nicht kein Bal Meufes. Sagt er, yeah. Ihr seid ein Bal Meufes. Ich bin ein Bal Meufes. Sagt er, wie er sei? Sagt er, ich habe getroffen einen jungen Mann, Keulnik of mine, und sagt mir, als ihr ihm gegeben ein Kind. Ich habe gegeben ein Kind, ich weiß, was redest. So he tells him the name of the young man. Sagt er, was redt ihr? Was wilt ihr? Sagt er, Schugene. Sagt, was am Schugene? Sagt er, he came into me. Ich bin gesessen und gelernt. I don't know if anybody knew this Steipler. He had one of these big shofars, which were his so-called sophisticated hearing aid, which was a shofar which he held to his ear. And he used to sit and learn, and you had to shout into the shofar to make him hear what he was saying. He said, I was sitting and learning, kommt rein ein junger Mann, und fängt an zu schreien, will mit mir reden. Sag ich, lass mich hoch, sitz und lernen, was wollt ihr von mir? So he goes out again and says, komm zurück später. Sagt, eine halbe Stunde herum, kommt noch einmal rein. Sagt er, was wollt ihr? Sagt, ich darf mit euch reden. Sagt, geht da rein, kommt da rein später. Sagt, eine halbe Stunde später, kommt noch einmal rein. Sagt er, was wollt ihr? Sagt er, ich will noch mal Kind, ich will nicht kein Kind. Sagt er, weißt du was, ein Jahr herum mit mein Kind. He went out, und als er ist rausgegangen, und getracht bei mir, bin ich beschuldigt geworden. Wie kann ich sagen zu einem jungen Mann, ein Jahr herum mit ein Kind? Was bin ich von mir beschuldigt? Chas mich um. Wie mag ich hören, als er sagt, getracht, was gehe ich tun? Hab ich getracht bei mir, ja, eine Sache, was kann ich tun, ist davenen. Hab ich gedavent ein ganzes Jahr, ich habe gesagt, till ihm jeden Tag, als der junge Mann soll mein Kind, ist die ganze Sache ist Twille. Ist nur Twille, ich bin nicht kaputt mehr versucht. Twille hat es gemacht. So I'm saying to all of you, before I finish what I'm saying to you now, Twille is the element that we've got to think about. Ahavas Yisrael and Tefillah. And I'm going to make you an offer that you won't be able to, you can't refuse, as it says in that very famous film, which we shan't talk about. Every child is born in a shutvus. It's a husband, a wife, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We now have a fourth shutuf, and that's Bonei Olam. I'm offering every person sitting in this room a shutvus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Can you imagine if I go around to each table here and say, you want a new shutvus? They say, do me a favor. Choshing business, I've had a lot of problems with my shutvim. I really don't want to have another shutvus. I say, no. The shutvus is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wow. Who wouldn't invest? Who wouldn't invest? I'm offering you tonight. I know everybody here has donated generously to be sitting here this evening. But throughout the year, think what you're doing with your tzedakah. Think of Bonei Olam and think you'd like to be a shutuf with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we become shutuf with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can't afford to lose one more child in Klal Yisrael. We lost 6 million Yidden in the last war. 6 million Yidden. I travel around the whole of Europe looking after the Bonei Chaim, and I see them one after another, Bonei Chaim, in every single village in Poland and Hungary and Belarus and Lithuania and Latvia. I see them there. These were all killers, all disappeared, all gone. We've got to replace those killers. And you here, sitting here tonight, through Bonei Olam, will make sure that the mishpochas of Klal Yisrael will be larger and forever larger and grow to become a huge and massive replacement for those people that were killed to be able to become a Bnei Mashiach. Let's be shutfim with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make absolutely certain that this enlarged family that Bonei Olam has created together with us will be Mekabel Bnei Mashiach Mimhevi Amen.